Hi, this is Randy. This video is on algebraic expressions and equations. So let's take a look. To talk about expressions and equations, let's go back to something that you're more familiar with from English class, and that would be phrases and sentences. So if you have a phrase, let's say, like cleaned his room, that's not quite a complete sentence. It kind of makes sense, but we're missing something. So let's look at a complete sentence version of this. Oh, Randy cleaned his room. Now we have a complete thought. We have a complete sentence there. Another example, sent a text, not a complete sentence. Something's missing there. Oh, the cat, of course, the cat sent a text message. Now we have a complete thought. Now we have a sentence. Let's look at the math version of this. So instead of a phrase and a sentence, we have expression and equation. So cleaned his room was not a complete a sentence. Well, in math, we would say that's not a complete equation. For example, 3x. That is not a complete equation. There's no equal sign. So that would be an expression, an algebraic expression. Now 3x equals 12. That is an equation. It's like a complete thought. Here's another example, x plus 2. It's not a complete sentence. So we call that an expression. X plus 2 equals 5. Now we have an equation. Let's look at a different view of expressions and equations using a picture method. So let's use an image of a seesaw to represent an equation. The seesaw is balanced because we have two guys on the left and we have two guys on the right. Well, the math way of writing this would be 2 equals 2. It's a balanced equation, like a balanced seesaw. Here's another example. This time we have a box. Inside the box are some guys, but we don't know how many because the box is closed and we don't have x-ray vision. But on the other side, we have two guys. The mathy way of looking at this, you have X guys on the left, we don't know how many, and you have two guys on the right. So this is a seesaw representation or view of an equation. Now let's talk about how we can break this apart and look at expressions. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Okay, so here's our seesaw. Box equals two guys. Now I'm going to break the seesaw in half. So I have the box part on one side and I have the two people on the other side. Let's take another example. I have a box and a guy on the left and I have three guys on the right. I can break these apart. So now I have just the box and the guy on one side and I have just the three guys on the other side. When you break apart the equation, those two parts are expressions. Let me show you what that looks like in the mathy way with an equation. So instead of a seesaw now with two sides of the seesaw, I have my equation with two sides of the equation, the red side and the blue side. Well, I can break it apart like I broke apart the seesaw. So on one side, I have 3x. Oh, that's an expression. And on the other side, I just have a 12. That is another expression. When you have two expressions equal to each other, it's an equation. So the equation has a red expression on the left and a blue expression on the right. Here's another example. Let's break this equation into two parts. One part, the left part, is x plus 2. That's an expression. And then on the other side, we have just 5, and that is an expression. And so now you have, and you've seen expressions and equations. And so your expressions are like incomplete thoughts. They are kind of like the They're kind of like the phrases in English class. So you don't have an equal sign, but then when you put two expressions together and put an equal sign in the middle, now we have our equation. And that is expressions and equations. So the next video will cover the following. We'll talk about what you do with an expression. Well, one thing that you do is you evaluate an expression. And then after that, you'll see another thing that we do with expressions where you simplify them. And then later on, we'll talk about equations and solving equations. And that is expressions and equations.